All right, shall we? Well, welcome everybody. My name's Jeffrey Spier. I'm the Nissan Paul John Balson Senior Curator of Antiquities here at the Getty Villa. Anyway, I'm really delighted to welcome artist Umar Rashid to the Getty Villa. I've been looking forward to this talk for some time now because I know how much fun you are and instructive too, of course, I should add. Umar is originally from Chicago and attended Southern Illinois University at Carbondale, graduating with a BA in cinema and photography in 2000. He moved to LA at that time, to Los Angeles, and shifted from photography to painting and producing works in other media as well, including sculpture. He has some interesting painting on rawhide. He has drawings and prints on tea and coffee-stained paper, all sorts of original things. He's remarkably prolific, kind of relentless, I have to say.
Yeah, I concur.
Okay. Taking part in numerous group shows around the world and having solo exhibitions at various far-flung places. Just to name a few, the Museum of Contemporary Art in Denver in 2012, the Wellen Museum at Hamilton College in New York in 2013, the Nevada Museum of Art in Reno in 2013. You'll see a pattern here, a very prolific activity. The Wadsworth Athenaeum in Hartford in 2014, the Hudson River Museum in 2015, University of Memphis in 2017, the University of Arizona Museum of Art in Tucson in 2018, the Vincent Price Art Museum here in LA in 2019, and at our friend Jill Moniz's Transformative Arts in downtown LA in 2020. Jill's here. Thank you. And right now, at this very moment, two major shows from Umar at PS1 MoMA in New York, which is on until March, and the Dordrecht Museum in the Netherlands. The Dutch finally getting some attention as colonizers, I see. This is good. And just a final note on this great history. Umar's works have been acquired by many of these museums, as well as Santa Barbara Museum of Art, the Brooklyn Museum, and the Zeitz Museum of Contemporary Art Africa in Cape Town. At the moment, we also have a piece up. Jill Moniz, I mentioned, the curator, has curated for us contemporary responses to our Ancient Nubia show at 4 locations around Los Angeles and the Getty Villa itself. And one of Umar's works is upstairs, so I hope you'll see it after this talk if you have not already. This exhibition is called Adornment Artifact, and please go see adornmentartifact.org for details of the locations and events. So, I'm sorry for that long introduction, but you do all this.
No, it's charming. I feel better now. I feel I can go on with the rest of my day effortlessly.
Good. We want to make you comfortable and make you happy.
keep it coming.
Okay, and this is about you, and I do want to know about what you've done because it's quite remarkable work. It's very, it's not the typical career. It's not the typical subject. You're not trained in this. You're mostly self-taught as a draftsman and a very fine draftsman. I've seen portraits and then these big compositions looking at history. And I suppose that's what I wanted to, that's how I came to you anyway. I came to you through the Made in LA show at the Hammer in 2020, where Umar was one of the contributors, this wonderful triptych, which we'll get to. But and I apologize for coming late to all of this, but I'm a big fan now. And can I summarize sort of briefly the way I see it before I turn it over to you?
And your apology is accepted.
Thank you. And I should point out that one of these is on a jigsaw puzzle in our gift shop. So we're doing everything that we can.
I'm trying to get my merch up.
That's right. This is true. That's true. But I'll try to summarize briefly why I think what you're trying to do, why I think you're important. It's no easy thing, and this will surely be inadequate, but it's no less than a re-examination of European colonialism, the French, the English, the Spanish, the Portuguese, the Dutch, told from the point of view of the people whom they invaded and brutalized, I think it's fair to say. You've sort of recreated these empires into something slightly different, which you'll explain to us.
Yeah.
And you focus on some of it's focused on the battles and the atrocities and sort of the historical events, but now the natives are fighting back.
Right.
And often defeating the invaders, and more than defeating them, which I think is the important thing, is sort of ridiculing them. Right?
Yeah.
So is that like a fair assessment?
There's more that we can add to that, but pretty much, basically, it's just I started doing this work in about 2000 roughly, and started to really codify it around 2003. And the impetus for the work that I do, it all began, it actually began when I was a child. And I'm not going to tell you some shit like I was a little kid and I was always a genius artist or anything like that. I've been painting since I was 5. Fuck all that. I basically, I knew, all my life, you read this singular narrative of history. And, just life in general is based upon a duality. Everything is dual. God, the devil, good, evil, light, dark, whatever. So there's duality. So if this is the history that we're being presented with, then there must be another history that runs concurrent with this history. But for the sake of ruling an empire, that story was never told. So basically, I just took it upon myself to tell the stories that were never told. So it's not like a revenge fantasy. I'm not trying to make a painting Django, or anything like that. That's not how I started out. But, there are other stories. And I remember when I moved to Los Angeles and I was living in this miserable Koreatown apartment, respect to Koreatown, but I was living in it was hard times. And I started getting into I think it was the Gutenberg Project, where they had started to find all these rare books and catalog them and put them on. Yeah. So there's a wealth of information that we just don't know. And so that was the original beginning of this show. So at that time, I was talking about explorers trying to find the Northwest Passage. And so there was this, I actually started this story at the end, which deals with a king, emperor, the first black emperor of the English Empire, who gets stranded somewhere in between Saskatchewan and Alaska.
This is the Frenglish Empire.
Yeah, so the Frenglish.
So this is your version of it.
Exactly.
Empire.
So what I did was I merged two empires. I merged France and England together as a country called Fringland, and partly it was a joke because I know how much the French and English historically hate each other, and so it was my kind of flipping the bird to them in that regard, by mashing them together. But when I did that, I really started, I do 6 months of research and 6 months of execution. So I'll read all these books and I'll figure out what I'm going to do for the year or what I'm going to do for the next couple of years. And I'll just read all, just absorb all this information. And so that's the potential energy. And then I make the works, and that's the kinetic energy, So it's like this, for me, the secret to my prolificness is just, finding this natural circadian rhythm of ingesting and then
it's pretty
vomiting.
For like all of history, though. Let's show them some, because I'm not sure everybody is aware of what you've actually done. I'm sure. Let's look at this just as an example. We could take any of Umar's works and do this, but I really like this, and also this is relevant because it's the Battle of Malibu, and
we're right here.
We're right here, here. And this is what really happened here. We talk about, we'll get to that. Let me show you some of the details. These three were at the Hammer on each one wall, and these are very big paintings. These are, what is this, like
I think
7
they're
foot?
6 by 7, yeah.
6 by 7 foot.
feet, yeah.
They're big.
Or 6 by 7.
72 by 84, yeah. So, and the other thing is that, I should say this, I mean, and this is what I also enjoy very much. I'm not going to say it's the most important thing, but the humor and satire in your are very important parts of these works. And aside from the very long and clever titles to the paintings, you typically include inscriptions on the works, often puns, plays on words, alluding to both history and contemporary culture. So it's sort of a never-ending, I don't know how you want to say this,
Yeah.
but it's so all commenting on these tragic events, but more often than not making fun of the colonizers. And I think I like that. There's great power in that, because ridicule is more powerful than indignation.
Okay, so as far as the humor goes, like I think, like my job as an artist, and I mean all of our jobs is to foster some form of dialogue. History already happened. How are we going to change it? So, I'm not going to sit around and wail and talk about how horrible things were because we already know that. That's been done. So, to move the conversation forward, and I don't expect it to happen in, this grand realization or awakening that happened within my lifetime. And I think that's the mistake of a lot of people who exist in the world today, especially with the activism that you see. It's like you may just do it, just start it up, but you're probably never going to see the end of the result because this life never ends. Yeah. It goes on and on. I mean, one day the sun's going to fucking explode and we're all going to be dead. But that's like 50 million.
For a while,
yeah, it's like 50 million years from now, or maybe 5 million, or
no, but the point
years.
is just to keep going, to keep trying, to keep
showing
things.
So that's where, so I bring in a humor. And plus, I grew up in the theater. My father's a playwright. So I grew up in the realm of theater. So just knowing how to tell a story, to make a story compelling. Mm-hmm. So I've been doing that. And then also, I went to school for film before I taught, so I know how to make a story and jam it up with a lot of stuff because it's a two-dimensional painting. So so I'm thinking with like a fourth-dimensional brain in a two-dimensional space, and so it's to create all this stuff. But then also, so this in particular, the Battle of Malibu, it was. I remember when the announcement was made. In 2019 that I made it to Made in LA. I was super excited. I was like, finally, the respect that I deserve. And then in February or March of 2020, when the plague struck America, when the plague struck the world, I was just like, I'm done. I'm done with this. I'm done. I was like, finally, my good times moment, kept my head above water, and it all just crashes down. And, but the thing is, I will say this about the plague. The comforting thing about it was it happened to everyone. Yeah. Except for the people in New York City who moved to upstate New York.
To the farms,
and the people who lived here and moved to Texas. Anyway, or just everybody in Florida. So so there's that. So I felt, like, God, this is the end. So I knew that I wanted to make an exhibition, and well, actually, there was already this had a precursor. I did a lot of shows about the Spanish mission system, which was called the Mission Control narrative. And so
mission control, get it? I love that.
So it's like mission control. So I did this whole story starting in about 2015, because prior to that, for the previous 5 years, I did a long story about New England. It was a New England narrative, which culminated in Kill Your Best Ideas. That was the culmination of that show happened at the Hudson River Museum. So then, I started my West Coast narrative, and I already had like some conjoining narratives. I had a narrative in Memphis. I had a narrative in Denver. And so I just kind of pushed that in, and then that later became the narrative, the impetus for the narrative for Arizona. And so, but since I live here and the show's called Made in LA, I wanted to talk about the Tongva, the Chumash, the Gabrielline, or whatever names,
And we should say, talking about Chumash
yeah.
are the native, the lands that we are inhabiting here.
But then they have
they
have like the Spanish name, the Luiseño,
Yes.
the Gabrieleño.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, I never know. I mean, I hope that I'm not offending anyone. I'm not here to do that. I'm not here to culturally appropriate. I'm here to culturally appreciate and, you know, tell stories that haven't been told.
And I think this is what the great value here, where we like to say we're on the Tongva and Chumash lands, but here we are showing what was happening
Yeah.
here. Here we have the Humaliwo.
Yeah.
Can I do a
Malibu.
pointer here? Malibu, that's the word for Malibu.
Yeah.
Here they're fighting back on their ships.
Tomol, the Tomol,
Tomol's
the
the type of
Tomol, the
boat.
longboats, yeah, that they use for seafaring journeys. And then there's the like the kind of like the celestial beings. There's this Spanish or Aztecan jaguar, and there's the jaguar warriors, because most of the conscripts who fought in the auxiliaries who fought in the Spanish army were of Mexico, or at that time it was called New Spain, Nueva España. So, so you have that, and then you have like a Corvette. So the play on there's a play on words. A Corvette is also
ships.
a boat,
Yes.
but then there's a little red Corvette with black Jesus and white Jesus in there.
Yes.
You know, just hanging out.
So we got lots of Corvettes.
Yeah,
We got
you-
a reference to
you got-
Prince. And I like this black Jesus and white Jesus.
Yeah,
That's
you know,
interesting. I think white Jesus is on the next one. Sometimes they're together.
Oh
and
yeah,
they get
yeah.
along.
White Jesus at the opposite is black Jesus whipping the yam and the little red Corvette.
Yeah.
And then white Jesus is in the Surf Riders and the Jaguars from Mars. Then you got Poseidon
I can show.
and his you have Poseidon and his chariot with his little horses and dolphins and things.
And he's fighting on.
He's fighting on the side
Side of
of the
native
people, yeah. And then you have like the Fringlish auxiliaries who are coming in at the bottom of that. And the interesting thing about battles in the 17th and 18th centuries, and even up until the 19th centuries, is they were usually set battles. So they would have people on the ground picnicking and, you know, like eating snacks and watching people die. I mean, it's the same sort of fatalism that we see in modern television.
Very much so.
Yeah, life is horrible. But and then but it's great. And then we have the sea monster, and then it says sea monster. You know, so
Yeah,
it's
see,
like,
a lot of that. Lots of nice stuff.
Yeah,
And there's some
like-
more. I'll go to the similar one. This is the other panel.
Oh,
with
yeah.
The,
So
and here are the
that's-
titles you can see. They're great titles with the Surf Riders versus the Jaguars from Mars.
yeah, like I mean, I really love David Bowie too. So David Bowie, you know, Ziggy Stardust, all the things that David Bowie did is really a fantastic person.
Yeah, and
I usually don't get upset or sad when celebrities die because, you know, it's like they lived a full life. But, you know, I was kind of taken aback by that, you know, as I was when Prince and Michael Jackson died as well.
Yeah.
But we're not going to talk about that because that's sad. We're going to talk about the Silver Surfer.
Silver Surfer. I love the Silver
we're
Surfer.
gonna
We've talked about Silver Surfer before because he's important here. He's a symbol of good. As
Yeah,
he was in
he's-
Fantastic Four. See, I remember well. I'm older than Umar. We're both from Chicago, but I remember.
Yeah, that's true.
But 66, so you weren't even born then. But
No, I was
the Silver
thought of.
Surfer first appears in Fantastic Four, and he's like maybe the greatest character ever in comic books.
I love the Silver Surfer. He was always like, you know, he had to serve like somebody that eats worlds and, you know, have a conscience. So it's like the
Sort of introducing ethics and morality to the immoral Galactus.
exactly. And so,
like that.
and so he plays a similar role in this in my stories. Like he's always that third stream person, you know, because you know, like I said, life, you know, is dualistic. But you know, every once in a while, you know, there is a place in the middle, in between, but we just can't live there. You can't live there, because then it's just, I don't know, it's this feeling of null. I think you have to engage with either side at some point. But so he represents a third stream character. And then there's some Babylonian, like there's Inanna there at the top.
Oh, is that in Nana? Okay.
And then, well, that's a version of Inanna. But then,
Yes.
you know, because Chumash, they have their own gods and goddesses, but the research wasn't there, so I had to substitute in some Babylonian, some other primordial beings
Excellent.
instead.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's a full. So don't think like they worship like a woman with braids.
No, but that's right. And we do
same
have a few,
person.
and quite a lot of classical things too.
Yeah.
Poseidon, which
And-
of course we like around here, and here you have sort
But-
of a Hydra-like.
But you do have the animal totems. You do have the animal gods. You have the bear, the great bear. You have the raven eating the Spanish Hydra. You have the priests surrounded by lightning bolts. You have the kind of proto-Polynesian surfers there, and then you also have a lot of carnage down towards the bottom.
Yeah.
But and then there's the priests like flying like Superman, like
Yeah, the priests, they appear quite a bit, the fathers, sort of Franciscans.
yeah, the
I'm not
Franciscans.
entirely, so what do they,
Well,
what are they doing?
that's who basically ran
Yeah.
the mission system here. But then there's the Jesuits who were in other places, depending on where they went. And then there's so I was also kind of making fun of the QAnon
yes,
thing.
I was going to ask you
so
that. We have
with
Fanon here.
Frantz Fanon,
Frantz Fanon, yes.
So there's a lot of always
French West Indian, great
Yeah.
anti-colonialist.
from
So this is
Martinique.
from
and-
Martinique, yeah.
Yeah, and so and then most people, they think. I mean, nobody really studies Fanon. Like, he's brilliant.
Yeah.
He wretched earth, black skin,
Yeah.
white mask. So Frantz Fanon, his writings are very influential in my youth, and so I just wanted to, kind of give him credit. But then it was like QAnon. I was like, F anon. Let's talk about Frantz Fanon. Let's not talk about whether or not we're all gonna die getting sucked into a giant vortex. Like, it's not important.
No.
Like,
no.
if that happens, just let it be quick. Atomic explosion. Let it be fast.
No.
I'm
Whereas
not,
Fanon is
not-
actually addressing important issues.
yeah, I'm not into suffering.
Right. And there's more of it
Oh yeah.
here. There's
So-
quite a lot here. This is the centerpiece of it. Now we've gone to black and white.
Yeah, so I do these black and white drawings. I was very, ever since I was a kid, and walking around museums like this, and being in a this kind of museum setting, and you see like all these the Greek amphoras, and you see like that, that black line. Well, it's black pottery with a ochre inside of it, or some.
Black
so
figure,
I
red
kind
figure,
of utilize that, so making these pieces, which is more lends more to my hand and wordplay than the other ones. The other ones, they're very colorful, so you use minimal wordplay. But this one, the death of Father Wyatt, and Wyatt was the god of the Chumash people, and then I think.
And then the Wyatt up in Northern California were massacred in the
I think he got
1860s.
killed.
Yeah.
And then it became this other deity named Quaor, which is the middle. So then I took a piece from the Wiz, not the Wizard of Oz, but the Wiz, and that is there. You have King Colonizer and the Kool-Aid Man. Who doesn't like the Kool-Aid Man breaking through a bunch of gold bricks?
And it must have something about drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yeah. So drinking the Kool-Aid. So, and then they're taking Datura, which is a mild hallucinogenic.
Hallucinogen that was native
yeah,
ritual. Yeah.
at the bottom, and they're making it through the tunnels of emergence. There's also allusions to the show that I used to love until they ruined it, called Lost. And then there's an Orca Man somewhere in there, and there's Orko from He-Man, the Masters of the Universe. There's also Star Wars, like Chicano Star Wars. They're in the Lowrider up there, like So and Sarah. Richard Serra, there's a Richard Serra
I love
wall.
that. Yeah.
And then there's a
Junipero Serra, and then K Serra.
K Serra.
It puts Father Serra in his place.
So it's a lot of stuff. It's a lot to take in.
There is a lot here. So there's the Star Wars.
Yeah.
There's Datura's down here.
This mixtape.
The mixtape. It's a mixtape. Yeah.
The origin of Ku Klux Klan hoods from Spain.
Here we go.
Capirote. Capirote.
Capirote. Yes.
Yeah.
The peak caps that the penitents would wear in
Right.
Seville.
And then they
I
came
don't know how
and
that
just
got into the
turned
Ku
it
Klux
into
Klan,
like
though,
some.
because they're very anti-Catholic.
Yeah. Then they just turned it into, well, same thing with the swastika. I mean,
Yeah,
you see swastikas everywhere in the world, and some dumbass had to just ruin it for everybody.
This is true. It used to be a,
Yeah, it's still like in a lot of Indian temples,
India,
a lot of native
yes,
temples. The Navajo use it. Everyone around the world uses that symbol, but it's faced the other way, and it usually means really great things. But those people who will not mention in this telecast.
And your hooded guy is
Telethon.
acting as like a puppet master of.
Oh, so yeah, that's Orko. Orko was from He-Man Masters Universe, so
Yes,
he's manipulating, So I had this thing with wizards. I mean, I think ultimately I always wanted to be a wizard or some sort of alchemist. But, that career has been lost.
It's not too late.
Yeah, it's still not too late to become a wizard. Maybe I'll go to Hogwarts after I leave here and probably try to see if I can apply online. Maybe I might have a Zoom class that I can become a wizard in short order.
You would think that they would do that. So, I mean, I think this gives you all an idea of the depth, the scope of this big historical narratives. So you said you were influenced by your film, but also certainly by comic books, certainly by from India, Mughal miniatures.
Oh yeah.
I've seen some of that in your work. It's
the ledger drawings,
drawings of Native Americans, very much like that in some of your work.
And then in the sculpture, like the knot culture of Nigeria, even the Nubian, some of the stuff, which I guess you're going to lead into.
We got to get to Nubia.
Yeah, you're going to get to it.
I mean, I love these. This is great. This sort of work, and you saw the titles there. It's we'll look at some other titles because in the gallery. Oh, we already looked at that. I want to talk about. I'm leading with this. This was a piece that was in Jill Noni's Transformative Arts show. A big sculpted Ishtar Gate in Dodger blue. I love that with L.A. above. So this is classic, but. It's important because it's leading us back into history, which is what we do here at the Villa, and eventually to Nubia. This is one piece, and I know you're quite interested in Babylonian as well. And so we're going back,
I missed the show. You said the Babylonian was where the Babylonian exhibition opened.
We did have a Babylonian piece in our Mesopotamia show, yes, which are glazed bricks, blue, not quite Dodger blue, darker blue. But in the exhibition we had.
Yeah, it was more of like a lapis lazuli.
More like lapis lazuli.
Yeah, but since since when I moved here, I did that stint in Koreatown, did a stint in Inglewood, and then I spent my formative years in Los Angeles, mostly in East LA, across from Chavez Ravine. So, it's also, in addition to having my own thing, having known what I'm going to do, I absorb a lot from my surroundings and try to reflect that.
All right.
And so Ishtar Gate and Dodger Blue.
All right.
Got some cougars.
Got cougars.
Ravens.
Lions, yeah.
Rattlesnake with legs.
Yep. Very Chavez Ravine. Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is the piece up now in the gallery. You should go
Yes.
see. I didn't know what you would produce, but you produced something very.
I'm glad you trusted me.
I do trust you, and it's
You have
very
many
on topic.
choices.
I am a little sad we don't have the Silver Surfer in it, but it's a great composition. Apetamak is the lion-headed Nubian war god, so very appropriate. And I didn't have the title for a while. I think it took you a while to compose it. It's a very long title, but it's we almost lost Ta-Seti, which is the ancient name for Egypt. Esarhaddon, the Assyrian king, is repulsed at the delta. The power of Apetamak is known and praised. So it really is quite good, and it's alluding to the Assyrian invasion of Nubia. They are the original colonizers, if you really want to go into that.
They did a job, but now I'm like, I wish better times for the Syrian people.
Yes, yes, for sure.
Everybody makes mistakes.
Iraq has suffered quite a bit.
Yeah, it's like, come on, it's like, how long are people, how long do people have to suffer? Geopolitics. Anyway, so yeah, so my research into the whole Assyrian-Nubian conflict came from, there was a rap group in the 90s called Brand Nubian. And, in the black Egyptology scene or scholarship, in that realm, we would call each other Nubians and things like that because, the whole Egyptian, the Ptolemaic, when people referred to Egyptians, they referred to the Ptolemaic Egyptians and not the ones who preceded Ptolemies. The darker skinned people who are still there. If you go below the first cataract or you go below the second cataract, you'll still see them. They look just like the things with the noses blown off. So I'm black. I'm used to erasure in all of its forms. But I don't have to live with it. Because
you got to fight back.
I'm a wizard. I can conjure. So but actually also in there is a Lamassu. But it's hidden by the horse, and that horse is that horse with a pedimock riding the chariot is an allusion to Ramses, a portrait of Ramses defeating the Nubians, and so I basically just took that image and changed them into Assyrians.
Yeah.
So it's it's like a little remix, and then the vultures holding the symbol. Then I forgot that symbol, and I'm sorry. I wish I could tell you. And then there's the cheetah, which were actually cheetahs were used for hunting, and they were used for hunting for a very long time. Especially, I think they're still used for hunting in Saudi Arabia and other areas of the Middle East and the Levant. But don't take my word on that. It could be totally wrong. Everything, take it with a grain of salt. I could be completely wrong. But yeah, so that's the Lamassu. And the Lamassu's head, the Lamassu's been decapitated.
Yep.
I love using lasers to get rid of people.
I saw that, yes.
I think it's a very clean and efficient way of dispatching one's enemy.
Yeah. And often it is like X-Men style, from the eyes.
I wish I could just laser people all the time.
Yeah.
People I don't like, people who I owe money to.
Oh, you wouldn't. You wouldn't
I told you I was going to pay you. No, I wouldn't do it. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I would. Lasers. Anyway, so this one, so right now, so what I do, if you want to know more about the process, actually I paint the backgrounds first.
And also for the composition, you do drawings, you draw it out, right?
Oh yeah, I draw it out all the time.
Small, different versions.
Right, and then omit or add to certain things. But for the most part, this one was such a chaotic image because I wanted to get the Lamassu in there, I wanted to get the chariot, I wanted to get the cheetah, I wanted to get the people, and working in a square format. Even when I did photography, I used to always shoot like 120 or 220 film because I just like that size, shooting the square format because you can fit a lot more things in a square than you can in a rectangle. Interesting. And you have a lot more information, and so I generally choose to work in a square format as a result.
Interesting, yeah. And are you looking at anything else? Are we going back in time now?
We are, but I did that, I only did that once before, and I did a story about the origin of the word of why the Caribbean is called the Antilles. Because in, those old maps, like, there be dragons, so there was the Spanish mariners at the time believed, I believe it was the 8th century or possibly the 7th century, they believed that there was another continent that wasn't the United States or wasn't quote unquote, North America, but I think it was like it was supposed to be a continent, and then it has been disproven that it was the Canary Islands. It's been disproven that it was the Azores, so it's just beyond the Azores, and they called that land Antilia. It was the land of so when the Moorish invasion of Spain happened in the 8th century, 7 ships with 7 bishops left to go and start a new colony. And so I made a whole narrative based on that, where they actually ended up in like Hispaniola, and they were immediately killed by the Carib and the Arawak natives of that island. So, thus ended their reign.
So that brought us back to like the 8th century.
Yeah, so that was the first time that I had ever really gone back.
But do you have in your head all of history, sort of recreating
everything?
Everything.
It plays out every day. It plays out every day. I just like, I have what you would call a photographic memory. I just store information.
This is an interesting period when we're talking about the Assyrian. This is the first big empire. Assyrians coming in, invading
and iron
Egypt.
Weapons.
And yes, an iron weapon. Yeah, very
against
skilled
like
fighters.
gold and bronze swords. Like,
yeah,
the Egyptians. That wasn't going to work out for them.
No, they didn't do well against the Assyrians.
Yeah.
And the Nubians retreated. I mean, they had their victory here, but but eventually they said, "Okay, we're going back to Sudan."
They won a couple of battles.
Yes.
And I just saw the
great warriors for sure.
Taharka's tomb is his little like kind of like a little shabti, like smaller figurine is upstairs. And so Taharka, and then they just stopped going down beyond the Assyrians. Were like, okay, we're fine with this. Yeah, we got the trade, because the Nubians knew that they could still trade via the Red Sea, going the way of Axum or Abyssinia, Abyssinia, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. I mean, so many names for these places over the years. Ethiopia, Eritrea now, Djibouti, it's just like, but, they knew, I mean, the landmass is still the same. So, it's just, I mean, I really enjoy doing this work because I learn something every day. And that is the goal for me, is to keep learning and sharing what I know with other people.
And what's next then? So you've concentrated on your Franglish empire, which is sort of like end of the 17th to, how late does it go? Maybe beginning of around 1800 or so?
It's going to go until right now. I mean, I don't think I'll finish this in my lifetime. So I'm actually looking for people, scribes, who want to come down and learn from the master himself, to come and
dictate things to them.
You bow down, and he was like, please come. Join something that's greater than yourself, something better than you'll ever do ever. And then also I'm writing my book. It's Lonely at the Top. It's a rags to riches tale that I.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Sorry about that. I mean, I do want to, for the show that I just opened up at the PS1, I do want to do a book of that story, Ancien Regime Chains, Ancien Regime Chains 1 through 6. So that in itself
where does that take us? How late does that take us?
That's still like, I mean, I basically stayed for the past decade. I've been stuck in the late 18th century. Yeah,
well, this is the great colonialist period.
Yeah, but it's like, I'm stuck there, and it's not going to get any faster. It's not going to move any faster. Because now I'm getting into the Napoleonic period, and then there's, a
lot happens.
Yeah, so it's like, but I think I kind of want to write like a telenovela now, like a soap opera. Like, instead of being like set battles, like people in love and, somebody throwing a vase at somebody's head, or, things like that.
All right.
I don't know. And then I'll be in my movie.
You're going to do a movie now?
You should have been there from the beginning. Yeah, starring, I want Ben Kingsley to play me in, like Ben Kingsley right now with
just
old-ass Ben Kingsley, just to play me as a young man.
He You'd be good. You'd be good. All right. Well, we're in Hollywood. I think there are a lot of movie people out here. In the audience, probably. If you can talk to them after our little talk here.
Anybody who's Ben Kingsley's agent, just hit me up. My Instagram is ProHawk2Feathers, and he can just send me he slide in my DMs, and we'll take care of it.
All right, that's good. I'm wondering whether we should open it up to some questions.
Yeah, we can. Are they going to start? Are they going to roll credits on us anytime?
No, we can go indefinitely. I mean, we'll probably lose the audience, so you and I can stay here and talk. But I think it would be interesting to hear what people are saying.
Yeah.
Can I take that? We'll both open up to audience here, but also online.
Roll credits.
Probably be quite a few. I can't really see. We have a microphone going around, so if anyone wants to ask a question, they can just raise their hand. Here, and we'll start. We're off.
Let us begin.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay. My question is, your painting is everything from ancient to today. And I was looking at it, level, everything in it. It's like a book. When you start reading a book, there's so many characters, you don't know what's going on. At the end, you get to the conclusion. I was trying so hard to get to the conclusion because I could see everything. Since I like history, I could follow what you were doing, but what is the conclusion? I didn't get it.
That's the thing. There is no conclusion. It goes on and on and on and on and on. I mean, the conclusion as far as I got, it's just to make like to finish the book, somebody dies, somebody's being held, there's some food, maybe a wineskin or something being passed around, a body is burned, a horse is on fire. No, there really is no end. Because I couldn't figure out, because we're still in it. Like, we're still living this, even though it's an alternative history, we're still living it. So that's what I'm saying. It'll require somebody else to kind of take up the mantle when I've gone away or moved on to bigger and better things like my burgeoning film career, my book writing, New York bestseller list, and all of that. No, I'm just never going to finish it. But I know that now. I've accepted it. And I just want to get as much information there as possible. But, it doesn't really have, it does end in one way. It ends with the abolition, global abolition of slavery. So that's the high watermark that I want to do, because the Portuguese kept slavery going up until 1880. So I start this narrative out in 1658 after the death of Oliver Cromwell, and then I move it to 1880 during the Portuguese abolition of slavery. But then you also have, at that point, you have the Berlin Conference, and you had the partition of Africa, and then you have all these other horrible colonial atrocities. So I just had to end it somewhere, and I was like, I'm going to take the global abolition of slavery as a boom and let somebody else handle the rest. Because it can go into the future. It could be like Frank Herbert's Dune or something like that. I have no idea, but I know that I probably will not be alive to do it.
But the great value is these things are here. You can see this, and it's very thought-provoking, all of these, and then the endless amount of information. Each one of these paintings makes you think about all this. There is no end to it.
Yeah. Thank you. That was a great question.
It was a very good question. Let's take another.
When you began painting, how did you go about just getting your work in front of people's eyeballs?
Oh, well, a lot of threats, veiled and real threats. Just basically violence in all of its facets. No, my charm and wit. No, I would go around. I would go all throughout LA. I showed in coffee shops, boutiques in Echo Park. Like my friend had, my friend had this gallery, boutique called Show Pony. My friend Kimmy Bazzelli had it. This place called Show Pony. And she would, like all the hipsters would be all in Echo Park, and we would show the work. And then there was this other woman, Fiora Kirschbaum, who had a gallery called, it was in, what's the name of the gallery? It's going to come to, okay. Anyway, so there were a lot of places, LA was a lot more welcoming when I arrived here. There were so many different places you can show, and half of those people are still making art to this day because we had a community and we supported each other. So I was very fortunate to be in there, and then like all the people in the Culver City art scene opened up. Those people were the people who were hanging out and in that space, and then they opened galleries and they brought those people with them. So I got lucky, but then I was also forgotten for a lot of years because nobody was interested into colonialism until the water protests in the Lakota Nation, and then people had just kind of forgotten about colonialism, and then when George Floyd and Breonna Taylor were murdered, then people started getting into this and they wanted to hear more black voices, and then they just found me under a rug weeping. So I was like, oh, sorry, so I always say like, my career was born out of tragedy, but I was never going to stop doing it. I was going to keep doing it. So, but I do believe if I can give you any advice, if you want to do it, choose violence. It always works.
It's always sensible, yeah.
Now don't choose violence.
I lost the,
It's for the kids listening, do not choose violence, please. And the adults. No, it's but I think it's very easy it's a lot harder now, but then Instagram, now you got Instagram and all these things, and people can, it's just like a smorgasbord of art, but sometimes you just get overwhelmed. So don't choose violence, okay.
Hello.
Hello.
My question for you is, now that AI has become like sentient in this industry, and you mix literally all history together, like are you thinking of having a conversation with AI? Because clearly like you just keep mixing and mixing every moment in time of every atrocity together, future, past, present. So
Yeah.
like, just curious. Because that's like what's happening now. Everything's getting mixed.
See how you do with an AI.
I know, but I want to, the one thing that I truly enjoy about what I do is that it is all within me. Like if I'm going to be the last living computer, then let it be so. Like I don't want to join, because somebody else is probably going to do that at some point. But I want it to come from me, with all the flaws. And, because once we get into that, we and it's going to happen. I mean, I can't stop it, and I won't try to stop it, but that's just not for me. I want to do it with this body riddled with vodka. I mean, and this flawed body, lots of flab and just sleepless nights. No, but that's the thing. Like it was. I'm not like a Luddite. I have an iPhone and I have a computer, and I use the internet. But
sometimes answers emails.
Sometimes I'll light a smoke signal to talk to people. But no, I was just like, I think this is probably we're living in the last generation of humanity, like unaided humanity, and it's a very frightening prospect. So I'm just going to try to do whatever I can to stay in this body and do it.
Let's take a couple from Zoom because they're watching.
Oh, you gotta.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Follow-up. We have a follow-up.
Follow-up question. So, like, are you going to go to any of these sites in history, like the ones that are, somewhat upkept in like Egypt or Syria or Petra? Like, are you going to ever, create these worlds IRL?
Yeah, I'm going to go. I spent a lot of money on National Geographic books, and I still got my Encyclopedia Britannicas from when I was a kid. Yeah, I will. Actually, I'm planning on going to Cairo next year, and then I'll sweep up through Jordan, probably go to Tel Aviv, have some shakshuka, and then, liberate Palestine on my own. It's just I have a lot of things that I want to do, but I've been to all the European spots. But yeah, I mean, I would love to travel around and see all these things firsthand. But then again, sometimes firsthand, it's I think the memory and the impression of a thing, the vision in your mind, sometimes it's better. It's just like never meet your heroes, right? Because I hear like the Great Pyramid is like super tiny. It's not as big as you think it is, because you always see like a tiny person on a tiny camel, like way far away from it, so it looks massive, but it's tiny. It felt tiny?
It's pretty big.
You'll
like it when you see it.
Okay, so somebody was lying. I have to choose violence later on.
It was a normal camel. It was a normal sized camel.
Thank you.
Let's take a couple from Zoom. We don't want to neglect you. A couple people were very intrigued by how you work. You talked about reading for 6 months and then working. So I've got two related questions. One is that it says your impressive awareness of multiple histories has to be massive to accomplish what you do. We know this is true. And how do you learn what you need to? How do you find your sources? Is it academic process or a more free-form search for information? You already talked a little bit about that.
Free-form.
And similarly, someone else says, so you said you read 6 months and then produce work, but what are other ways you seek inspiration? So they're asking you, well, how do you get all this?
Like just walking through the streets and, just talking to people, interacting with people. I mean, people, that song is true. People make the world go around. Like, you have to interact with other people, and because that's how you can flesh out your characters. And that's another tragedy of this digital technical age. We don't even interact with each other. I know people, like my neighbors today, were having a full-blown fight over wiring their Christmas lights, and I thought somebody was going to get shot, stabbed, or killed. And then they turn over and they acknowledge me, like, ah, and I was like, wow, what kind of Stepford shit is this? So, I mean, it was just very wild. And these things happen all the time. But I think, but that was the interesting interaction, because they noticed me. They noticed me, and then they it kind of averted some sort of crisis. I don't know what's going to happen at the dinner table later on tonight, but it averted a crisis, because we acknowledge people, but now we don't. We're afraid of everything. We're afraid of each other, and we don't acknowledge each other, and that's going to be a problem going forward. So, the way I choose my information is free form, however it comes to me. I meet an interesting person. Hey, where are you from? I'm from the Seychelles. Okay, great. You guys got that big giant clam and those huge sea turtles. Yeah, and we sell the eggs. How'd that come about? Well, these Portuguese, and then that becomes, and then I'm interested and intrigued by that, and then I, find out how that fits in my story, and then I make a whole narrative about it.
All right. One other question from the internet. That's sort of interesting.
Thank you, internet. Wait, where am I looking? Where's the camera?
No.
I need to interact with the camera.
All right.
They need to see me.
And Zoom, I guess they could put themselves on, but I don't know who, and I don't have the name. I'm sorry. Anonymous attendee.
Oh, anonymous.
Do you see a similarity between your work and the silhouette work of Kara Walker in terms of using traditional art forms to subvert historical narratives? Do you like Kara
No,
Walker?
because I think I was making work before Kara Walker was born, which is a total lie. No,
this is not true at all.
No. No, I mean, I love Kara Walker. I find Kara Walker fascinating. She's amazing, great artist. But no, I didn't. That she wasn't influenced on my early days.
Fair enough. She does have some interesting anti-colonial.
I just really love the work. I think I would see her more as a contemporary more than an influence.
Great.
Even though I was still in the shadows. I'm still in the shadows.
You're not. Anything else in the audience? Any more questions here? Here's one.
Hi.
Hello.
Someone already asked one of my questions on the internet, but kind of a follow-up to the whole research process. I was wondering, how do you make that distinction for yourself between, the feeling of needing to represent all of these other really important versions of history, and where do you balance that with your own imagination and creativity and Little Red Corvettes?
Good question. It's again, it's like what I was talking about duality earlier. It's I just I know there's this and there's that, and then it just kind of this is the powdered sugar, this is the Nutella. Well, no, wait. How's that gonna work? Now this is the bread roll. There's the Nutella. It's open. Actually, it's kind of a flatbread, actually. And it rolls in that Nutella, and it takes that, and then it rolls out the powdered sugar. So it comes out complete. It's the one. It's not a thinkable moment. It's just like it's an inherent. It's just something that comes to me. I don't really. I'm not saying I don't think. Like I'm just like a mindless golem inside the studio, just like smashing it. Art make now. It's basically you just see it. You envision in your mind. You envision the end, and then it just happens, just like that. So there's magic. I'm gonna actually make this bottle. No, I was gonna be make this bottle disappear. Just throw it against the wall. Thank you for that question.
Another related one from the internet. You mentioned they love your forced.
Now read some of the hater questions because it's a bunch of.
I'm not getting enough of those. No.
I want to hear from my haters.
Coming through here.
Is this some hate?
Yeah, all right. Let's
bring it on.
Okay. I'm a big fan of your work. I especially like it when there are female protagonists in your work. So I want to hear a little bit about, are you finding enough female protagonists when you're doing your research? Do you think they're there in the hidden narrative, and how do you pull them in? And not make them, the hero versus the whore.
Right. Well, that's a very good question. That was actually when I first started out. When I first started doing this narrative, I had to find more heroines because I felt like, if I'm gonna go on this journey, I have to respect everybody. And then there's things about gender-based things, sexuality-based things that I wanted to set right. Like it's an open book, but you don't run into many heroines even in the unrecorded histories. Well, there's Bartolina Sisa in Ecuador. There's Nzinga in Portugal. Of course, Cleopatra. Nefertiti, who was actually foreign. She wasn't truly Egyptian. Then there's Roxanne with the whole Alexander the Great thing. She was like the queen of some place in northern India, or which would have been Iran at the time, or Persia, the Persian Empire. So you have all these people, but then so sometimes I have to just make like composites. But and then you have the Warrior King just came, the Woman King just came out. But that movie is slightly problematic, so I won't talk about it. Then there's the what else is there? There's Gaddafi's guards.
The bodyguards?
Yeah, but who are based off the Dahomean Amazons, the Amazons themselves. So yeah,
but you don't see a lot of this in your work. Are you going to start paying more attention to this?
I don't. This isn't Pandering Express. I don't pander if I don't have to. That's where a lot of people go wrong in their work. They start pandering, and then you get stuck there. It has to be organic. Like I said, you think it, you see it, the beginning, you see the end, and it kind of coalesces. Yeah, I don't pander. Even though it might help, but I have a healthy relationship with always putting strong female characters in the healthy history of putting strong female characters that aren't marginalized and, ridiculous. They're just, there because there's so many women in my life. Again, this is, I'm just looking at the world as it is back then and piecing it together, That's it. I'm just seeing it for what it is.
I've got 2 internet questions. You're known for your couture occasionally. And I've had 2 admirers of this.
Oh,
They
yeah,
want to know what your hat. And someone who obviously knows you says, hey, Umar, so when are your capes coming to a store near us?
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
you do have some nice capes as well, which you didn't wear today.
We gotta sit around that donation bucket. Because I'm gonna make some capes. No, I don't know. I don't know when the capes are coming out.
All right. They want to know more about your hat and capes, but I don't know.
Yeah.
What can you say?
Yeah, hey, whatever floats their boat.
Okay. Are there any more questions in the audience? This is your big chance.
Oh, I was like, and scene, roll credits.
I have a question about a painting that wasn't shown here, but the ISS Mission Control. Can you talk a little bit about that one? And also Black and White Jesus are in a Lincoln this time. So kind of the narrative around that artwork.
Wait, which Mission Control was this one?
This was... ISS is Mission Control, or We Won. If Our Rulers Live in the Sky.
Oh, yes, the one with the Transformers in it. Oh, yeah, that was a great one.
Yeah.
I love making that one. So Mission Control, I basically, instead of being on Earth, it's in outer space, the Tongva got spacesuits and went out there, and there's that scene when you're about to die in space and avoid space where you put your hands on your lover's face, but you can't really touch their face because it's a giant mask on there. I always love those scenes. Anyway, so I put that in there. But that one, it was just to take it, because all this stuff that we see, we can't destroy it. It's always going to be there. As uncomfortable as that may feel, there's no such thing as a perfectly good world, because how would we know good if we didn't see evil? How would you know evil if you didn't see good? So this duality, that's ultimately, I guess, what I'm talking about. And it took me a long time to really realize that. What I was really trying to say was like, hey, let's have a good time while we're here. Try to be good to each other while we're here, because we already know what the alternative is. Now, as for the Black and White Jesus, growing up in a multi-religious experience, I grew up in a Christian household, but more spiritualist. And then, my mother went off, and she really wanted to explore the different denominations of Christendom. So I went to a Baptist church, went to an Apostolic church, went to a Catholic church at the end, I got confirmed as a Catholic. And then 2 years after that, I converted to Islam. And then that was around high school. And after high school, I met my wife, who's from Japan. And then I learned about Shinto and Buddhism. And so it's just like my religious experience just grew and grew and grew and grew. So it started off in this Abrahamic kind of base, and then it moved into all these other different areas. And so I can respect each other's faith. So when I try to treat them with reverence and respect in regards to the work, I don't dismiss anything. There's all characters of all faiths within the work. But Black and White Jesus was always a problem, because you go to your grandmama's house when you're a little kid, you see this white Jesus who didn't look like anyone else in the house. And I always found that odd. And then there was actually a Good Times episode about that. And then
this is a real thing.
Yeah, it was a Good Times episode about it. I was like, why is this white Jesus? I think Michael had brought it up. And then Black Jesus didn't really become a thing until the late 80s, 90s, so then you start seeing representations of Black Jesus with an afro, and he's all swole, and so I just, making that dichotomy. I mean, it's actually is very funny to me. I mean, not making fun of the religion. I'm just making fun of the depictions, because, you go to Asia, you got a Chinese Jesus. You go to Japan, you got a Japanese Jesus. You go to Mexico, you got a indigenous Spaniard hybridized Jesus. You go to Levant, you got, he's actually, that's where Jesus is from. So yeah, let's scratch that. So I guess, Arab Jesus is the de facto Jesus. Or Levantine Jesus, if that makes you feel better. Australian Jesus. So anyway, the Jesuses. And it'll always be funny. Actually, I just did Jesus, black and white Jesus on skates. On skis recently. Now, next time I think I'm going to put them in rollerblades. It depends on whatever the narrative is.
Brings new meaning to spirituality.
Yeah,
we started off on this very inspiring spiritual message, and now we're into skiing.
Oh yeah,
it's great.
It's great. It's like I see no boundaries. All possible futures. Thank you.
It's great.
Thank you,
I love
Jeffrey.
that message. Yeah, no, I think maybe we should stop there. Thank you, Umar. Thanks for coming. We've gone pretty long anyway. Thank you all for coming.
Take a bow. Let's take a group bow.
Yes, right.